Everyone, we'll go ahead and come to order. I'm Greg King, Chair. This is the January 23 meeting of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission. Let me get this a little bit closer. Thank you. So lots of new this morning, and I'll encourage everyone, just as Mr. Urban has done. I'm going to need lots of help getting out of the gate, so don't hesitate, don't be bashful. Before we get going, let's go ahead and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so everybody also please join me in silence in that cell phone. And let's welcome some new faces this morning as well. So we have to my right at the far end, Ben Winters is joining us as a new commissioner, so everyone give Ben a nice warm welcome. Also joining us for the first time this morning, long absence, is Brian Fogel, back on staff, and we welcome Brian aboard. If you guys have not worked with Brian before, you're in for a treat. And then finally, Barry Baxter aboard with us as county attorney. So welcome aboard, everyone. Where to begin? Let's look at minutes.
Swearing staff.
Oh, all right, let's go ahead and swear in staff to begin with.
We used to have a procedural thing, but go ahead.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Urban, anything else before we move into introduction of the docket?
Well, minutes. Yeah.
Excuse me, minutes, yeah. So we'll move in next into approval of minutes. Can we get a motion on the floor?
Move to approve.
Mr. Edgar moves and Ms. Davis seconds. Do we have any corrections, updates, edits for the minutes? Mr. Finney.
Page 404, second line, talking about Chairman Jeffers announced his resignation from the Planning Commission Board as he has been elected to sit. That word should be sit.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, anyone else? All right, move into approval. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Move into approval of the minutes as corrected. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay. With that, we will move into the first docket. Ms. Edgar, will you read the docket, please?
PZ 23001. Application has been filed by RL Home Services Incorporated for the approval of a zoning map amendment on approximately 1.5 acres. The property is located at 305 South Cedar Street, LaGrange. The proposed change is from R2A Residential District to R4 Residential District.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher, you'll be doing the staff?
And you know, we always have a development plan review, and this is just a single site with one building on it, but we really ought to include that we consider the development plan as well.
Will do. All right. Do we need anything more formal than just that?
No.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, you'll be doing the staff presentation?
That's me.
All right, you're on.
All right. It's Ryan Fisher, Senior Planner with Oldham County Planning and Development, 100 West Jefferson. So as Ms. Edgar stated, this is for a zoning map amendment at 305 South Cedar Street and then the corresponding development plan. So application's been filed by RL Home Services for the approval of that zoning map amendment, actually the recommendation of that zoning map amendment to the city of LaGrange on approximately 1.5 acres. Property is located at 305 South Cedar Street in LaGrange, and that proposed change will be from an R2A residential district to the R4 residential district. Here's the site information for you once again, sitting on 1.5 acres, currently an R2A residentially zoned district. Site history, there was a demolition permit issued in January of 2004 for a previously existing single-family residence that was located on the property. It's my understanding the fire department may have used that for training purposes, but there was a demolition permit issued for that property. The case history, there was a neighborhood meeting that was offered on the 21st of December. I think that information is in your packet. So that was offered on the 21st of December. Adjoining property owner notices were mailed in early January there on January 4th. Public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on the 5th of January, and the sign was posted on the property on the 10th of January. And because of the unique nature of this lot, we actually did 2 sign postings, one on the Cedar Street side of the property. So this is the alley there that runs alongside the cemetery, and then we actually posted one as well on the other side of the property on Oak Avenue. So both of those pictures located there. So here's the property in question, 305 South Cedar, and it actually includes this portion that runs down along here, which you'll see later on in a survey that the applicant has provided. Here's the zoning map. Currently, once again, R2A. And our future land use map shows that the future land use of this will be single-family city. So the applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment to change that zoning from R2A to R4 on approximately 1.5 acres in order to construct a 2-family dwelling, a duplex. R2A does not allow 2-family or multifamily dwellings, while R4 allows for 2-family and multifamily dwellings as a permitted use. Applicant proposes to construct a 1,600 square foot duplex on the property, so both of those units would be 800 square feet according to the plans the applicant provided. The applicant's justification states that the development is small, consistent with the residential nature of the area, and will offer affordable housing for low to moderate income families. Here's the survey that was provided by the applicant. Note the location of their proposed duplex there. This is just showing the R4 residential district where 2-family dwellings would be a permitted use within that zoning class, and just a zoomed in version of their proposed duplex there. So the proposed binding elements, the approval applies only to the plans presented here at the January 24th, 2023 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There should be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineer's Office. And the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. And as always, the Planning Commission may amend, delete, or add additional binding elements at the public hearing. So in summary, the applicant is requesting a zoning change from R2A residential district to R4 residential district, as well as the corresponding development plan on 1.5 acres at 305 South Cedar Street in LaGrange. And as always with your zoning map amendments, this would be a recommendation to the city of LaGrange for that approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Anyone on the commission have questions for Mr. Fisher? Anyone else from staff wish to provide input? Being none, all right, we'll move into the presentation from the applicant.
Good morning, Chelsea Bramall. I represent the applicant RL Home Services. I'm at 401 West Jefferson Street in LaGrange. I do have R.L. Lanham, who's the president of RL Home Services Incorporated, so we may defer to him for technical specifications. He's a builder in this case and the property owner.
Well, let's go ahead and get them sworn. What do you say?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is a pretty straightforward application here. It's just for the construction of one building. I may add a point that I think there may have been an error. The 1,600 square foot represents the footprint of the structure, so there is a second story on there with 500 square foot. So The 1,600 square foot, 800 each is just for the footprint of the building, which is consistent with the other structures in the neighborhood with the single-family homes. We're not asking for any variances from the setbacks here, so it's going to fit squarely within the project. It's consistent with the nature of that area with smaller single-family houses, plus directly across the street, you're getting larger scale multifamily. So this is a blend of both. It's the single structure duplex, but it's a multifamily home, so requires that R4 designation here. We also point out that it's a good project for the area. It's a vacant property at this point, so bringing some life and bringing that property up is going to be important. It will also bring in a couple of other units, housing for the area, in a good example of infill development. So it'll already have all of the infrastructure from the city to these units. We're not asking to expand on the outskirts of town. And finally, this is, it'll provide another range of housing. So as opposed to single family versus the large scale multifamily apartments across the street, it's a good blend and a good mix for the area. I think it'll look great when it's done. We're not asking for any condition or any variances, so it'll fit squarely within the lot. It backs up to that cemetery, so it's nice on a good sort of, not a dead end, but I guess a dead end. The road turns into the parking lot for the apartments. So we're happy to answer any questions that you all will have.
All right, we'll get to that in a minute. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm not expecting anybody, but is there anyone here, anyone else besides the applicant who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, we'll move into, we're going to assume there are no others to present testimony or evidence. We'll skip the rebuttals and the finals. Are there questions from the commission?
Well, you can ask if there's any opposition.
Oh, is there any opposition? All right, thank you. All right, so questions from the commission. Mr. Finney? Nope. Mr. Hampton?
Misheard you, but just for the record, you said there's a second floor. I'm confused with that. If it's 1,600 square feet and it's 8 and 8, I thought I heard you say there's a second floor.
It's 1.5 stories are reflected on the chart, so we didn't account for that.
Well, I'm still confused. How many square feet is it?
Mr. Lanham, can I get you to come up to the,
And it's really a traditional townhouse type floor plan, correct?
Yes. 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 So we have,
Name and address for the
let's
record.
get your name and address before we start.
it's R.L. Lanham, 5402 Hillock Lane, Crestwood. So we have on the first floor about 1622 for both units. So we divide that by two, about 800 on the first floor. The second floor goes up the half story. So it's about 504 square feet per unit. So about 1,300 square feet each unit.
It says 800.
Well, she corrected,
okay, on our-
in her presentation, she corrected that. Yeah, offered a correction, right.
Yes, it will correct. Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Marsh?
Define the exact lot. Which one of those legs? A few of these drawings have the easement as part of the lot, and then the other just has the square portion. What is the exact size of the lot and shape of the lot, please?
Would you put up the survey, please?
Yes, that.
So what we call the slither going down,
You can use the mouse and move it on the screen.
To kinda
Take the
look at it.
mouse,
Mhm.
and that's, it produces an arrow.
okay.
There you go.
So this is about, in our deed, it says it's about 20 feet here and goes all the way down. So we can see it goes all the way from here to there. We're going to enter around here, and this will be the parking on Oak Street. Right around here.
So I just want to clarify, in the staff report where you see an aerial photograph with those lines, those are for planning purposes only. You really just disregard that. This is a survey, and surveyors are charged with creating an accurate picture of what the parcel looks like. So although you don't see it on here, we do have a copy of a survey signed by the person that performed the survey. I believe it's signed, right?
Okay.
So this is from that survey.
Okay.
Mr. Marsh, that all you have?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Douglas?
I'd like to go back to the survey again, where it says 8.5 feet side setback. Can you tell us exactly where that side setback is? Is it from the corner? Can you point on there and tell us where
Okay.
the setback is? Because this is kind of, if you notice, I can see it's kind of,
Let me
Set
find
different.
where you are.
because the setback is, I believe, in the zoning is 7.5 feet side setback, correct?
Is this
Yes.
overhead functional?
So I'm trying to figure out what determination the surveyor used for the 8.5 foot setback.
Well, the minimum is 7.5.
Yes.
I think the surveyor has placed, and unfortunately, the surveyor passed away.
No,
We had conversations with him before, and I don't mean to offer evidence, but I remember that conversation with him where he pushed the building an extra foot so he doesn't overstep the side yard setback.
since the surveyor's not here and the engineer's not here, I can't question him, and I knew he was deceased. So my question is where on the plot was it actually surveyed for 8.5 feet? Because their minimum is 7.5 feet. So the way the design of this is, it's kind of,
You can just use the pointer
Yes.
and point to the place that's 8.5 feet.
Go
That's your
from-
question, right?
yes.
It would be this one right there. So that is off of looks like right at the fence. Would be 8.5.
I don't
Right at the fence?
know the fence.
Well, put the pointer on the corner of the building that you're saying is that corner is 8.5 feet from the property line, right?
Yes, and
Yes.
Is that correct?
it looks like as the line goes, we're inside of the fence a foot or two.
Okay, because I couldn't find a legend on here that shows what he used as far as like, 1 foot equals 1/4 of an inch or whatever. So I don't see it on his drawing here. So since I don't have that to ask him. My next question is about the parking space. Is it a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage?
No garage.
No garage? So parking is where?
It'll be out front. We'll have a parking area, asphalt, right in here, kind of here. Will be parking spaces.
So is there a front yard?
Yes, this all won't be, so there'll be front grass out here.
Okay. And then my final question is that, are these proposed for sale or proposed for rental property?
Most likely rental,
Are you the sole investor?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I want to apologize for something. You know, you're looking at something really specific. On the plan, it says 8.5. I bet that's a typo.
Well, I don't know. I can't ask the person who
Yeah.
made these.
Because if you look on that little, I'll call it the clam leg that goes to Cedar Street, he's marked it at 7.5 side setback. And for some reason, when he put that line that goes all the way from Cedar to, well, near Oak Street, he put 8.5. So that could have been an error as opposed to that's what he's proposing as the setback.
Well,
Is that,
if I look at his drawing, this is my question. If you look, it says 30-foot setback, and then he's got 7.5 and 8.5 in between those two lines of boxes.
yeah.
So that to me doesn't add up to be 30 feet setback. I just, the calculations doesn't add up to me. So that's the reason why I'm asking those questions. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Well, the 30 feet is from Cedar Street.
Correct. But I do not see a decrease down at the other end where it says what the
Yeah.
setback would be on that end. So I'm taking for granted it's 30 feet straight across, but if I take 8.5 and 7.5, that's 16 feet. Where's the other 14 feet?
But again, the 30 feet is from Cedar Street to that point. It isn't the entire, you're,
But the building's
Not-
encroaching in
what is,
30 feet.
let me ask this. RL, in your testimony, you said what the width of that Cedar Street frontage is. And on the map, the plan, there's a denotation for L4. What is that L4 dimension? The width of that Cedar Street frontage.
Let's see. It's about 20 feet is what.
I'm going to answer for you. There's a on this plan, there's a box. I don't want to testify.
Okay.
And there's a chart, and in that bottom line, there's an L4. What is the distance that's listed there?
All right, let me find it. Where's my letters?
And this is where you're going to get the math.
You see our L?
It's right here. That little box.
Okay, L4, 19.9 feet.
So if you add 7.5 and 7.5, that's 15. And that little space between those two setbacks is the difference between 19.9 and 15, not 30.
Okay.
My concern is that the person who developed this plan is not here to testify to correct his error on the 30-foot setback that he's got on here.
But 30 feet is from Cedar Point to this line right here.
That says L4. But if I look at the box at the top where you're
No, you're reading it incorrectly. It's this distance right here. It's from Cedar Point, Cedar Street to the 30-foot setback, period.
we could agree to disagree.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be argumentative, but that's not a point of disagreement. It's a setback line that doesn't have anything to do with the width of that. That's why I pointed out that L4 is 19.9 feet wide, not 30. No, okay. We'll have a training after.
Mr. Douglas, is that all?
It is.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions?
No, because I was testifying.
All right. There being no further questions and no opposition, we're going to move into final statement. Ms. Bramall? It's okay.
We think this is a good development for the area, and we just ask that you approve the zone change in the development plan.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, before we open the floor for motions, Mr. Urban, can you give us a recap?
Yeah, you do have two decisions to make. The first is a recommendation of the City of LaGrange on the zoning map amendment, and on page 2 in your staff report, as always, there's a sample motion for either approval or denial. with some reasons for either that approval or denial recommendation. And we put the binding elements on the development plan, not on the zoning map amendment, so it's just a matter of whether you recommend approval or denial to the city of LaGrange.
All right, Mr. Baxter, anything to add? All right, floor is now open for motions. Mr. Falvey.
Yes, I'll make the motion to recommend approval to the city of LaGrange of the zoning map amendment. Testimony today, it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan. And the proposed plan seems to meet all standard in the Oldham County zoning ordinance. I would make the approval based on the binding elements also, including the binding.
Well, we do that again on the development plan, so the binding elements aren't included.
All right, that all?
And that,
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Second was from Mr. Marsh. Thank you. All right. Discussion. Appears none. Ms. Bramall, we'll move into a roll call vote, please. Ms. Edgar. Sorry. And you're off the hook.
All right. Ms. Davis? Yes. Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Ender?
yes.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Halfling?
He's not here.
I noticed that. Sorry. Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss? Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion for PZ 323-001 approval carries by a vote of 12 to none. Mr. Urban, next up.
I have 11.
Do we have 11?
Count them again, just to be sure.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's make that 11.
Thanks. The second decision
Otherwise carries.
have to make is on the development plan, and we're proposing binding elements. The first is that the approval applies only to the plan presented at the January 24, 2023 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Second is there shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineer's Office. Third is that the plan must comply with established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. And I didn't hear any other potential binding elements.
Thank you, Mr. Urban. So we'll move into motions. Floor is open. Mr. Falvey.
I'll make the motion for approval of the development plan under PZ 23-001 with testimony today. I believe that this plan also fits in the neighborhood, and it should include the binding elements as listed.
Thank you, Mr. Falvey. Mr. Baxter, is that an adequate motion? It is. All right. Do we have a second? Mr. Hampton, thank you. All right. Ms. Edgar, excuse me. Before we have that, let's move into any discussion on this first. Being none, Ms. Edgar, please,
I thought
Mr.
of one,
Urban,
I'm sorry.
sit tight.
I think in light of the discussion and what we talked about, Mr. Douglas, that there's an error in the side yard setback labeling at minimum, so that should be corrected on the development plan.
Shall we incorporate that into the binding elements? Mr. Falvey, is that okay with you? And Mr. Hampton as the second, is that all right with you? All right, we're covered. Any additional discussion? Ms. Edgar, we'll move into a roll call vote.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser? Yes. Mr. Klingenfuss? Mr. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Ender?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Davis? Yes.
Okay. PZ 23-001 Development Plan passes on a vote of 11 to 0. Mr. Bramwell, Ms. Bramwell, Mr. Lanham, your application has been approved, and this portion of the hearing is now closed. All right, Mr. Urban.
Well, since it was a short docket, we always try to do some training. As you know, we have House Bill 55 requires training, and I've asked Russ Rose, who's the director of Oldham County Water District, to come and give us the abbreviated version of the history of the Oldham County Water District. I think we agreed that we may spend about an hour either hearing about the water district, asking questions, but of course, water is an important part of any development. And Bobby, I think at some point, I really appreciated the conversation we had in my office one day about how it was your father and other farmers who were really the impetus behind water. I've always said recently, not always, but recently have said that there are significant events that have happened that actually contributed to the growth of Oldham County. But I believe firmly that if it weren't for the creation of the water district, when I-71 came through, if there wasn't a water district, it would be very rural in nature and probably wouldn't have as many exits as we currently have. If you drive north of here, you go through a lot of open land without any exits. That's because there's no infrastructure. So I think really, again, one of the most significant things was the creation of the water district. It then allowed for creation of fire districts and obviously potable water throughout the county. So I've done as much filling as I can, waiting for Russ to be ready, so.
I have an adjourned. Okay. I didn't even know that. This is. Yeah, we'll probably need to take some small framework.
It'll just.
If not, you'll have to do it.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you something before we start. Typically, we don't do training on video, but this is an interesting subject. Do you want to keep the video going?
Why not?
We ready?
Mr. Rose.
Hey, so thank you all very much.
You gotta come to the mic.
Yeah, that mic won't pick up, sorry.
So I know a lot of the faces, but for those that don't know me, my name's Russ Rose. I'm the CEO for the Oldham County Water District. I've been there since about 2006, and I could probably talk about this for hours and hours. Something obviously I'm very passionate about is the water district, and I want to tell you a little bit about the history. And when I started putting this together, I started thinking about, what we do today and maybe some things that relate to planning and zoning and what's going on in the county, and how the water district integrates into that. So we'll get started. So the water district, like most water districts in the state, were organized pursuant to Chapter 74 of the revised statutes. We are a political subdivision of the state of Kentucky, and we are regulated by the Kentucky Public Service Commission. And we'll get into a little bit more about what that means to us and to you. We serve the eastern 2/3 of Oldham County with water. If you can see, I think you can on your monitors, the far western part of the county is served by the Louisville Water District, and the far eastern part of the county, in a couple areas there, is served by the Henry County Water District. And then there's an area there in green that is served by the LaGrange Utilities Commission that we wholesale their water to them. So they don't have a treatment plant. They purchase all that from us wholesale. And then we cover the pink area. So I'm not going to read all this verbiage to you word for word, but basically, we take great pride in bringing water to our community, and we want to protect our resources. We think being good stewards of our natural resources is a obligation that we have as the water district. We have a diverse blend of customers, mainly residential, but we still have some agricultural folks in the community, some commercial, very little industrial, a little bit of governmental, and like I said earlier, a large wholesale customer with the LaGrange Utilities Commission. So we're governed by a 5-person board. Currently, our chairman is Jay Hall, local business owner, insurance agent. Our vice chair is Jody Curry, retired attorney here in the county and a local business owner. Our treasurer is Bob Durbin, CPA and accountant. Our current secretary is Jason Greer, local business owner. And our newest commissioner, recently appointed this month, is Ron Funk, a local builder. For years, he replaced Mel Milburn. For years, Mel sat on our board for about the last 20 years, and Mel recently passed away. Mel was an engineer and a local surveyor. So the district as it is today was formed in the early 80s. That was formed from 2 earlier districts, one called Ohio River Oldham at Oldham County Water District 3. So both those districts were started in the early to mid 60s. And as Mr. Klingfuss can probably tell more about than I can, because I've gone back, read a lot of the minutes, looked at a lot of the history, but both those districts were started. A lot of it had to do with bringing potable water to local dairy farms. Local dairy farms at the time, the way it's always been told to me, had mostly grade C milk. Is that right, Mr. Klingfuss? Okay. But potable water helped them get to grade A milk?
Bobby, if you're going to...
Get your mic on. There you go. You can be part of the presentation. There you go.
Just a short version, sure.
In the early 60s, what happened with there was probably maybe
Bobby, a
7.
little closer to the microphone.
The population in Oldham County is real small. I'm going to guess less than 10,000 people. And probably 80% of the people were farmers, and they either had milk, orchard grass, or tobacco. That was the total income of the county. And in about 62, we converted from hauling milk in cans to bulk trucks. And at that time, that necessitated a system to haul that milk, and rates were so high that the farmers formed an organization to buy their own truck and haul the milk. During one of those meetings that they had at the school district up here, there were 126 dairy farms in the county at that time. That would be about 62. There was a lot of complaints about the health inspector was degrading us and we couldn't sell our milk. You would just lose all your income for weeks, and then you could get. And the only source of water we had would have been ponds, cisterns, wells, and the health inspector would come and check your water to see if it was potable. And the farmers had a habit of what you had to do is every morning when you got done milking your cows, you would have took a water hose or Clorox down it, all you could. So if he came that day, it would pass. So it was needed. It was a needed thing. So my dad happened to sit on the FHA committee, and at that time they knew if you could get $15,000, you could do a study to put a water system in an open community. So there was 126 farmers at that time. So there was a motion was made. I was about 14 at the time. And a motion was made that there would be a $150 fee if you signed up now to get water. So at that meeting, they got almost all the money they needed, and then they went out and got the rest of the money from local individuals. So basically, they formed 4 committees. That was 4 water districts, and water districts were originally run by 16 different dairy farmers. Then it was easier if you were in the Crestwood area. Louisville Water wanted it. It was easier just to pass that on to Louisville Water. And that's what the Dibbles did in that one. We would look at the ones.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Gene May, the Dibbles, all the ones that did that. But that's how it got started, because we were getting degraded, and they got us a potable water supply. And what came out of that because we had the water system in the 70s, busing came into play. And what that created was, it was, instead of in the adjoining counties, if they wanted to put a subdivision, they had to put in a cistern for the house. There was no water. It was about $6,000 cheaper to move to Oldham County since we had water. And that necessitated planning and zoning, because then the dairy farmers got upset, were concerned that there was going to be a bunch of trailer parks in Oldham County. That kind of,
Sure.
that's how things kind of progressed a little bit.
Well, and so oddly enough, that story is very similar all across the state. Dairy farmers were heavily involved in bringing water to a lot of the counties in the state of Kentucky, especially in our region. I know particularly in Shelby County, very same situation. That's what drove the bus to bring potable water to most of the communities. And so in turn, one of the easiest ways to get funding for that, other than the seed money, like Mr. Klingenfuss talked about, was Farmers Home Administration. And Farmers Home Administration, now called Rural Development, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, they provided a lot of the funding for that. It wasn't all free funding. It was through loans and grants. And so that money had to be paid back. And they helped to set the rates up and help to get water systems started and established. So the other part of the history of that involves the city of LaGrange here and the Kentucky State Reformatory, because prior to the water districts being in effect, the city of LaGrange had a water treatment plant. They drew their water out of what's now known as Max Lakes, here just north of town. And occasionally that lake would get low, or I know at least at one point in history I read about, there was a flood event, and they were afraid that the dam was going to break there. And then if that were to occur, they would be without water here in the city. So Along about that time, we had the reformatory happening here, and it was growing leaps and bounds, and they saw a need for public water. They started a project where they were going to go to 18 Mile Island, they were going to drill a well, and they were going to bring city water to the Kentucky State Reformatory. That's about the same time that these local farmers got together, and the reformatory basically said, the short version is, we don't want to be in the water business. If you all want to do this, here's the plans we've drawn up. You know, we've already acquired some easements, and you take that part of the project. The city of LaGrange said, well, we don't really want to be in the water business. We don't have a great source. We'll get on board as well. We'll buy water from you. And so everybody kind of came together, and that's how we got our original water treatment facility, which we pumped water from 18 Mile Island at that time. Like we said, we had two water districts that came together in the 80s. That was Ohio River Oldham, which was the one that had the treatment facility. We had District 3, which was an area, basically draw a line from Highway 146 south. And then you had District 1, which was the Crestwood area, Mr. Klingenfuss talked about. And you still had this area over here to the east that was served by Henry County. And so in the early 80s, Ohio River Oldham, District 3 came together. They merged and created what we have today, which is the current Oldham County Water District territory. At that time, they had about 2,100 customers when they merged together. Today, we have over 9,000 customers. With the city of LaGrange being the largest, they take themselves about 1 million gallons a day. And they have about 3,600 customers inside of their system. And then our largest non-wholesale customer is still the reformatory. And their usage has gone way down in the last several years. They used to take just about as much water as the city of LaGrange, and they are down about half of that now. So they're only taking about 14 or 15 million gallons a month now. Our greatest asset, you might think that's our access to water, you know, our lines, our tanks. We believe our greatest asset is our employees. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. But we have 21 full-time positions at the Water District. We have a certified professional accountant, licensed water distribution operators, licensed treatment operators. We currently have 2 licensed electricians, multiple CDL drivers, utility management certified personnel, an engineer, and mapping professionals. So we hold those employees to the highest standard because we want to provide this good service of clean, safe drinking water to the county. Like I said, it's our single most important resource. Our employees work 7 days a week. There's somebody at the water treatment plant every single day. We're on call 24 hours a day, and we work 365 days a year, like most water systems. We don't think about that. A lot of times in our community, we think about our emergency responders that do a fabulous job. You know, police, fire, EMS, they work every day, but our utility professionals do the same thing. They have to be out there in all kinds of weather. We recently repaired a water main break on Christmas Eve. It's just what we do. It's part of it. So, just a couple of pictures and videos showing some of our guys and they're repairing breaks. This break here, not a large main break, but they repaired it under pressure. And if we are able to repair breaks like that under pressure, then we don't have to issue boil water advisories. So that's our guys take great pride into doing whatever they can to benefit our customers. Just a couple more. I included some pictures here of some water main breaks. And some pictures of our folks. Gentleman in the lower right corner is Larry Capisser. Larry's actually retired now, but he was an employee of ours for over 30 years. And so most of the time when folks come to work for the water district, they stay. They don't leave. We take big pride in that. We really appreciate our employees and all that they do. So just a few more pictures. The upper left, one of our training sessions. So our employees have to take, like you all, have to take a lot of continuing education hours every year, depending on what their licensing requirements are. If they're a distribution operator or a water treatment plant operator, both those licenses require 24 continuing education hours every year. Our CPA has the same type situation, along with our electricians, everybody there. So you also might see a lot of our employees in the public during community events. I think this was maybe at one of the touch-a-truck events in the county. Also, you know, we do things around Christmas for benefits. Our employees volunteer a lot, so you may see them around town. The lower left is where we did a combined education day at one of the local schools with LaGrange Utilities. The lower right is the Grinch showed up at the Water District for Christmas. So our employees are very involved. We take so much pride in our water, we want to promote that. And so the picture there, the water bottle, that's Rachel Bush. I actually brought Rachel with me today. Rachel started working for the Water District about a year ago. She is also going to school at Eastern Kentucky University full-time. By the way, so working 40 hours at the Water District, taking a full load of classes at Eastern Kentucky University, and is a communications major. So we now are focusing on our communications with the public, something that we didn't do years ago, didn't have to do, but we want to do that. We want people to know about where their water comes from. You might see us at Oldham County Day, events like that. I think these are some more pictures from the local touch-a-truck events. Another thing about the Water District, we have an abundance of equipment. So we do, I'd say, about 99.9% of all of our own work today. We have the equipment to do that. Backhoes, trucks, trailers, skid loaders, excavators, dump trucks, trenchers. We've been able to acquire that equipment and do most of that work ourselves. Now, you may see water line going in a subdivision. We don't necessarily do that work. That's developer driven. But if we need to run a line or replace a line in the county, at work ourselves. We repair all of our own leaks today. We try to be self-sufficient if at all possible. We also do all of our own service work. Here's a couple more pictures of a couple of our trucks and equipment. We have a hydro excavator now in our system that allows us to excavate around other utilities like fiber and not damage it. It's a system that uses, it's like a very large shop vac on steroids and a high pressure washer that cuts the dirt loose. The vacuum vacs it up, but this way we don't damage other utilities in that process. Picture of, in our shop where guys are servicing our own vehicles. Then we utilize like the waste oil that comes out of those trucks and our pumps and our equipment. That's how we heat our shop. We have about a little over $500,000 in inventory and materials stored at the Water District. So we have everything from water lines that are 3/4 inch in size all the way up to 36-inch water mains. And so we have to keep materials on hand to be able to repair those should something happen. Talk a little bit about what our capacity is. I know you all talk a lot about capacity here at the Planning Commission, and this is something that I know when I came to the Water District in 2006, it was a very hot topic. We, in the last 10 years, have increased our capacity at our treatment plant from 6.5 million to 13 million gallons a day. So it's about 9,000 gallons a minute. So if you take 6 of these 1,500 gallon tanker trucks, we could fill all of those every minute if we're running at full capacity. So capacity is not a problem for us right now. On average, we pump about 4 million gallons a day, but we peak out in the summertime between 6.5 and 7, depending on the summer and whether we're in a drought or not. So basically, our capacity is about double what our peak day demand is right now. So that's hopefully a good thing for us and will be for several years to come. In 2022, we produced about 1.4 billion gallons of water, a little over that. And just to serve those folks in the area that we discussed earlier. We maintain about a little over 1,300 fire hydrants in our system. And I talked about the pipe sizes, but it's about 415 miles of pipe that we currently maintain. And the estimated population served is about 36,000 people. This map, it's really hard to see, but I just kind of threw it in there. Out of our service area.
Russ, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Of the 36,000 people, does that include LaGrange?
It does.
It does.
It does.
Okay. So about half the population, or over half, more than half,
right,
the population of Oldham County is served by the water that
we produce. So this gives you an idea of where the majority of the hydrants are. I mean, obviously, where we see larger development, there's more hydrants. But we maintain those along with the local fire departments. Occasionally, you might see a hydrant, mostly in the Westport area, but you might see a hydrant that's painted black, or it has a ring on it like this one here. It's an out-of-service ring. Most of the time, those black hydrants mean you're not supposed to use those. In the Westport area, it could even be non-potable water, where it's just our well water, it's untreated water. The fire department's welcome to use those, but they understand if we don't have wells running, that there may not be water in them capable for them to use. They're mainly for flushing purposes for us. So these numbers here are a little old, and I threw this in here We're down to about 430 water systems across the state of Kentucky currently. But it's kind of unique, I think, to see the breakdown of the type of systems that are across the state. So we have about, in 2013, the numbers were about 142 surface water systems that were surface water treatment systems, then 177 systems that just purchased their water from surface water producers, 108 groundwater treatment systems, of which that's what we are considered, and 24 groundwater purchasers, and we had 8 bottled water producers here in the state. So it's kind of unique when you break down the difference between groundwater and surface water and where folks get their water from. So when we talk about that, we can talk a little bit about our wells. We currently have 10 wells. They are all in the Westport area, and each will produce about 1,500 gallons a minute. So if you do the math, that's more than our current treatment capacity, but we have more wells than what our plant is currently able to treat. Part of that is redundancy. The water district is all about redundancy, and you know, if one goes down, we want to make sure we have a backup plan. So we currently have 10 of those groundwater wells. Those wells are about 125 to 135 feet deep, and they draw water out of the Ohio River alluvial aquifer. And so they're not drawing directly from the river. It's filtered, and depending on the scientist or the professional that you talk to, some folks believe that the wells are under direct influence from the river. Some believe that they're not under the direct influence from the river, and they're mainly influenced from the groundwater from the hillside. So it's kind of unique when you start looking at that, but very high quality water that comes out of those wells requires very little treatment. That's something that we have to try to protect. We do a lot to protect our well-filled area, and it's an abundant resource, but it's also a very clean resource. We currently have 11 water storage tanks in our system. We can provide about 8.8 million gallons of water storage. 2 million of that is in-ground storage at the water treatment plant, and the other 6.8 is above ground in water tanks across the county. And I'm sure you all seen or know where most all these are. So I threw in a few pictures here. This is the water tank out at Kentucky Acres when it was constructed in the early 2000s. And just so you get a little bit of idea of what that looks like as one of those is going up. I found this picture a few years ago of the water tank on the right, and that's off Sadler Mill or Morgan Place area. And if you've been by there and you've seen that tank today, there's houses all the way around it. I don't think you can take that same picture today. I probably ought to try to go out there and try to get that same angle. But we have a driveway that goes back to it, small lot, but it's completely surrounded by homes. That's not a bad thing, but we recently painted that tank 2 years ago, and I went back and looked. It cost more to paint that tank 2 years ago than it did to build it and paint it when it was built in the in the late 60s. So we fully fund our depreciation, and you can do that all day long, but you can have 100% of your money set aside over here for depreciation, and it's a drop in the bucket to repair some of these facilities because of the price increase that we've seen over the years. And I think that's just a really good example of when it costs more to paint a water tank today than it did to build it and paint it 50, 60 years ago. Just a few pictures of some of our piping facilities inside of some pump stations. Generator power. Most of you probably remember the windstorm of 2008 and the ice storm that followed that winter. Fortunately, we never ran out of water. We never had to shut anybody's water off during that process. Our treatment plant was without electricity for over a week. And we had generators at the time, but we didn't have enough. We saw that need, and that was one of the first times I think the Water District said, we've got to create this redundancy because we never know what's going to happen. We have to be prepared for almost any event. And so we started a quest, and we went out and we purchased a lot of used generators. We had our electricians go through those, and we now have generator capacity that we can run our whole system on generators 24/7. As long as we can get the diesel fuel to them, we can continue to operate, and nobody's going to go without water here in the county. And we currently store about 7,000 gallons of diesel fuel so that we can have that on hand as well. Just a few pictures during some of these events. Picture in the lower left, that's an area in Westport that's the water will go ahead and get up and get over that road in that area. Flooding, losses of power, those are some of the main things that affect the Water District as far as natural disasters go. Wind, this is actually out in front of the old Water District office on Highway 146 going into Buckner a few years ago. We had some strong straight line winds that came through, and it just tore down all those telephone poles down through there, and you can see where they just broke off. Hopefully this will work. I'll give it just a second. Yeah. So got a little video here for you to watch. So that's a water line that you're seeing there that's suspended and a guardrail behind it.
Was that on 524 when that landslide?
This actually is in eastern Kentucky.
Oh.
From this spring when the flooding events occurred in eastern Kentucky. And but it could very well happen here, just like it happened down there. We try to prepare and plan for that. This is another picture of that same area, but I bring this up just to show you what potentially can happen. So that road is completely gone. That crevice there is probably about 35 feet deep. The road's completely washed away. The water line's suspended in the air. The guardrail is totally suspended. So it can happen no matter what we plan for. We still have these natural disasters that can occur. Our crews were actually on site. That's how we got these pictures. when the flooding event occurred, our crews volunteered, said, we want to go help those folks. And they were willing to take vacation time, do whatever they needed to do. So we sent folks and equipment down. We actually sent a crew that was down there for about a month. And they helped to restore water to a lot of those folks in eastern Kentucky. But I just wanted you to see that, and then also to speak to what our employees are willing to do to basically help their fellow man. So in the early, about 2005, 2006, the district created a master plan to focus on areas that were both unserved and underserved, meaning maybe lines were smaller than they needed to be and need to be upsized. And so we continue to look at that 20-year plan. We're currently in the process of doing a major update to that, just like you all do the same thing here with planning capacity. The water district has to do the same thing. Part of that was the construction of the 2 million gallon storage tank that sits on Highway 146 between Buckner and LaGrange here. And I know many of you have seen that, and you probably know where that is. But that was one of the first things that came out of the 20-year master plan that was done in 05, 06. That's when the construction began on that in 2009 and 10. And when we doubled the capacity of the plant, we started increasing generator capacity. There's a few pictures from our actual treatment facility in Westport. And a few pictures of those large pipes being installed in the ground. The larger they get, the harder they are to install and maintain. So you can't just do it with a couple guys getting in the ditch. So I think the picture there on the lower left, I wish he was standing up, but that's a water valve, and the valve is taller than the man is there standing beside it. So that is only on a 24-inch main, and we have some that go up to the size of 36. About that same time, we installed 2 additional wells that brought the number of our wells up to 10 at that time. We put in additional, a redundant 24-inch raw water main from the well field to the treatment plant. So should something happen to the first one, a natural disaster occurred that took out one of our raw water mains, we could still operate because we have 2 of those. At the same time, we ran a new 36-inch water main out of Westport up to Highway 42. Our original backbone is a 24-inch that takes, that also goes to 42, but takes a different route. Again, we did this for redundancy. They're not running side by side. They actually, one's in one holler, one's next holler over, so that we try to do all we can. If one gets taken out for some reason, we can still operate. Folks in this county still have water. Just a few pictures down in the well field of the actual wells. There, you see they're elevated, and that's because of the potential for flooding. We don't want flood waters to get up into the motors and controls for those wells, but the wells themselves have sanitary seals around them, so flood waters cannot actually seep into the well water. We improved our telemetry system when we did some of these expansions, so we can now monitor what's going on in our system remotely. I can do it from my cell phone now. I can see what the tank levels are. I could actually turn a pump on from my cell phone if I wanted to. But we have monitoring capability all across the county. Just another few more pictures inside the plant. The 3 large pumps there are 450 horsepower pumps. Each one of those has the capacity to pump about 3,000 gallons a minute. So we don't run all those at one time. Those are there, again, for redundancy. Most of the time we run 1, occasionally 2. We never run 3 of those all together. But if one goes out, we've always got a spare. This was something that we knew we wanted to do. We got rid of our chlorine gas in the early 2000s, and about 2010 we were able to implement the use of sodium hypochlorite. It's just a real fancy name for bleach. Highly concentrated bleach, but we no longer use chlorine gas because of how dangerous that is. If we were to have a leak, we have chlorine gas, we might have to evacuate all of the Westport area. We know that the roads going into Westport are not the best in the world, and when you complicate that with snow and ice, that makes it even worse, and we have to get chlorine and chemicals there year-round. So although it's a little more costly, we eliminated the chlorine gas and went to a liquid sodium hypochlorite system. It's just a few pictures of that. We also modified our clear well system at the time. We put in a baffled system that actually kind of reminds you of something like you might see on a little mouse maze or something. So the water actually runs back and forth in these clear wells now, creates better mixing for the chemicals, and increases the water quality coming out of the plant. It's just a picture from down inside one of those clear wells. Couple pictures from inside our plant.
About 10 more minutes, but I want to make sure we get a chance to ask you
Okay.
questions. So
I
don't know what.
I'll
how
try
much
to
you got
buzz
left.
through.
I know you could go all morning.
Oh, I could go all day.
Yeah. What I think, if you have in here, would
Be good is if we get to even a conversation about how you interact with the planning commission, the water
Sure.
district. So
So I'll buzz through here a little bit. I told you I'd speak to the Public Service Commission just a little bit, and we are regulated by them, and what that means is that we cannot raise any rate or fee without showing just cause to the Public Service Commission, and they have to approve all rates and fees for the water district. The district has not had a residential rate increase since 2009. So that's not to say that we're not going to ever have another rate increase, and we're going to have one soon. But we've been operating in the black, and we've not needed a rate increase since 2009. I think for you all, one of the big things is, water is so important. It drives infrastructure. We take that very seriously at the Water District, and that's why we try to keep our systems updated and improved and replaced as needed. A topic for another conversation, we'll talk about water towers and how they operate, and how water pressure works. I've got a we could probably talk for another hour about that. But basically, you know, everybody's pressure relates to the height of the water towers in our system. And depending on whether you are at the bottom of the hill or at the top of the hill, that has a lot to do with what your water pressure is. So we'll leave that for another day.
Well, let me, if I can just add, you know, when, back in 2000, when we were doing the comprehensive plan and infrastructure in Oldham County was not keeping up with the amount of growth that started happening in the 70s and 80s and 90s, one of the capacity issues that we faced was this very subject matter, and I'm going to use Prestwick Estates as an example. There was a proposed development that would have been on the same water tank. And Russ, if I'm saying something wrong here, correct me, but those water tanks are at those elevations. That's where you get your water pressure from. The water isn't pressurized to get to your house. It's gravity.
That's correct.
And what happened in Prestwick was if you had a second-story house and you had a shower in that house, you were close to the same elevation as that water tank. So if you took a garden hose and you held it up and you put water in it, if it was clear, and you move the ends of that garden hose, the water level stays the same. So that's when we developed capacity planning for the water district related to minimum water pressure, and that also split off to include the fire suppression, firefighting water pressure. So that was really one case when there was a proposed development near there on that same, where the developer, as a condition of approval, was told they had to put in an auxiliary pump to that tank to make the water level in that tank higher, and therefore, I don't know if this actually happens, but the water then in Prestwick Estates got better.
Yeah, so Prestwick is a subdivision served by the LaGrange Utilities Commission, but that development got built, and they had the minimum pressure, but I won't say it was what was desired by the customer.
And that minimum pressure is at the water meter,
That's
not
correct.
at your shower head.
That's correct. Right. So we're required to give between no less than 30 pounds at the meter, no more than 150. And so all those homes had 30. I know. But what we ended up doing, I think it shows something about the collaboration between the two water systems. Down the road, we had Prestwick Estates. We had the one across the street, Jim.
Eagles.
I can't. Slips my mind right now, but we shifted some territory between the LaGrange water system and the Oldham County water system, and LaGrange. We gave LaGrange some territory, but they actually built a water tank that was 50 feet taller than the existing tanks that were around it. And so they installed a pump to fill that up. They installed a taller water tank. And we had just this one sliver of ridge line that went through there that had service problems. And those folks are now all served by that water tank from LaGrange Utilities. And so we were able to increase their water pressure by about 20 pounds. So it was significant.
So I'm going to divert you from your slides,
Okay.
just so we can get into questions.
Sure.
So we'll keep going on this. So when a development is proposed in Oldham County, we have a technical review committee that reviews that proposal. And first there's a neighborhood meeting, but the second step with us is the technical review committee, TRC. And the water districts are part of that, whether it's Louisville Water, Henry, Oldham, or LaGrange Utilities. And when when a proposal comes in, can you describe what a developer, when they come to you and it's in your district, what process do you go through to determine two things? One, the potable water, which is what you provide, but the second is we have firefighting capacity standards as well.
Sure.
So you have to do
Yeah, so a proposed development might come in. They would give us a preliminary plan initially. Mainly, they want to show us where that development is going to occur and roughly how many homes or building units are going to be inside of that. And we then in turn take that data to our engineers. We do a hydraulic analysis based on the size of the water mains and the capacity around that development to, number one, make sure that we have potable residential water to serve them. But then, like Jim said, also fire protection. If fire protection is always the greater of the two. So if we can provide the fire protection, we're not worried about being able to have enough capacity to provide the drinking water. In most cases, that's 750 gallons a minute. And so our engineers will do an analysis to see what occurs around that development, how the customers around that development would be affected, and whether we have the capacity to serve them. So it may not be that we're talking about capacity out of the water plant, because I've already told you that we have twice as much capacity as we need on our largest day, but line size has a lot to do with that too. So you can't, it's impossible to take a 3-inch water main and get 750 gallons a minute and sustain that for 2 hours so the fire department could fight a fire with it. So we have to make sure that the line sizes are large enough to be able to take care of that fire protection. So I think that probably answers your question about
Again,
that.
just so that the commission knows, and they hear about TRC and they see agency comments, but there's
Essentially, there's a lot that goes into just getting in front of the commission, not just with water, but all the other agencies.
Exactly. The map in front of you kind of shows you we have 3 water service planes in the area that we serve. The largest is on a sea level elevation of about 990 to 995 feet above sea level. And basically what that means, that's at the point that the water tanks are going to overflow. When they get above 995 feet, that's where the overflow point is. In Westport, that overflow elevation is 806, and over in the far western portion of the county, down along 42, it's 910. That's the Liberty Lane area, the area served off of that tank.
Well, Russ, I want to see if the commission has any questions. Can we just go to that? I mean, unless you've got something else in here, hate to cut you off.
No,
but,
that's fine.
Commissioners, any questions about?
John, one down here.
Mr. Falvey has. Mr. Falvey, please go ahead.
What's the total budget, annual budget for the
water district? Right now, between 5 and 6 million.
5 and 6 million?
Yes.
And then, do you have to reach? Are there national standards for the quality, how you treat the water here?
Yes, sir.
And so, you go by the national standards. Is there a leeway with that?
When you say, I'm not sure, I want to make sure I answer your question properly. We are always above what is required of us from the Division of Water or the EPA.
Okay, but there are national standards that you got.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
So standards for disinfection, standards for lead and copper, standards for chlorine. There's multiple standards, yes, sir.
All right, other questions?
My question was around the well field, and you had mentioned that you do a lot to protect the well-filled area.
Yes.
I'm assuming that area is limited in this county along the river in terms of what we could put wells on. What is, do you all look to acquire more land? Do you all protect from groundwater intrusion?
Yeah, it's a number of different things. So one of the things that was done in the early 2000s, and it was passed by the county here, there's an ordinance that if you're going to build in the wellhead protection area, you have to install an advanced septic treatment system that will reduce the number of nitrates that are going into the ground. And so if you do that, if you choose to do that and build in that area, the water district will actually participate in that septic system up to about $4,500, I think is the number. And someone can still build there. We're not going to take their rights away to do that. But it needs to be the type of treatment system that won't impact the well field. At the same time, the other thing we look to do, if we can acquire property in the well field area, in the wellhead protection area, then we will sometimes try to acquire those properties, and long term we'll eliminate the housing in that area and there won't be any septic systems. So
Mr. King, a little bit of a follow-up to that. You mentioned the nitrates, and early on we talked about the importance of agriculture and what drove the history. What do you do to stay in contact with the agricultural community and the farmers, and what are you doing to continue that and keep them in mind? I saw a lot of other development.
Well, we don't interact directly with the farming community here. What we do though is we interact with the Division of Water, and I'm trying to think. There was a group that was put together by the Division of Water a few years ago that specifically looked at farming and how that could affect the well-filled areas. And it wasn't very prevalent in our region of the state. It was mainly in western Kentucky. We don't have that problem in the Westfield area. You're not going to go down there and plant 300 acres of corn close to our well field because there's not 300 acres of flat land anywhere near Westport. So it's not been a huge problem for us just because of the geographic design of the land down there. So, but very important for us to protect that and create that buffer as well.
Further questions? Sure.
What is the purity of the water that would come directly out of the well from the ground?
It requires so little treatment. Basically, we hit it with chlorine to disinfect it. That's a requirement from the state. We put fluoride in it because we're required to by the Department of Dental Health. But those are the only chemicals that we have to add to it. We also add a sequestering agent that affect because we have groundwater, it's high in manganese. It's hard water. There's water across the country that's harder, but some folks would describe it as just short of rolling rocks, but it's not quite that hard. But it requires very little treatment. It does not require filters. So you can basically take it out of the well field and drink it.
You would describe it as basically drinkable without any treatment except what the law requires.
That is correct.
Thank you.
That's what we got. Mr. Douglas?
First off, let me thank you for you and your employees for what you guys do. And appreciate all the work you do. I have two questions. One is that what would you consider your future needs for a capacity level for treatment? I know you're at below what your standards are of 13, but how long do you anticipate that would last, potentially with the growth in Oldham County?
Sure. So with growth, as it reflects to growth, I don't think we were looking at any immediate needs to make any changes because we have plenty of capacity as it compares to growth. Things that we are looking at, and we just engaged an engineering firm to do a study. You may have heard of these words PFAS and PFOA. They're called forever chemicals. They're in almost everything. They're in the fibers of our clothing. They're in nonstick cookware. It was in a lot of firefighting chemicals and equipment. And almost anything that we go to use has some form of these forever chemicals. And so that's an area where the EPA is going to increase the standards. That's probably going to require us to do some additional treatment before they're done. We don't know what those are going to be just yet, but we know that something's coming, so we're trying to get ahead of the game. One of the ways to affect that is activated carbon filters, and we believe that that's probably, we'll be doing something like that in the future.
So that follows me up on my second question. What keeps you up at night, worrying about what could happen?
I always worry about the safety of my employees. I think they're all very safe, but that concerns me a lot. I know they do their job when it comes to water treatment. I don't worry about what they do, just if something might happen to them. Yeah, I always worry about our employees.
All right, further questions? No? All right. Russ, we appreciate you coming here and sharing with us today. We appreciate you getting ready for us. Rachel, you too.
Yeah, and Rachel, she's got some stuff a couple things to pass out to you, so nothing big, but
fair enough.
Listen, if any of you all have any questions, feel free to call me anytime. Call the Water District. I've talked to some of you before. Pick the phone up. If you want to go down to the water treatment plant, take a tour sometime, call me up. We'll do that. We do that for a lot of groups. If you don't know where our facility is, we're on Spencer Court here in LaGrange, 2160 Spencer Court. We're at the very end of that off Commerce Parkway. And we'd love to have you stop by either place, and and maybe come back again and talk for another 2 or 3 hours when you need to take a nap or something. So anyway, thank you all so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. And like I say, if you've ever got any questions, just let us know.
Thank you, Russ. We do appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, Jim, what else we want to do today? You bet there?
Yeah, there's a discussion about the 2-year extension policy. If you remember, and I'm sorry I didn't prepare a presentation about this or anything, but we have only a couple of subdivisions that have been approved but have not yet moved to the next phase of construction plan approval. And every 2 years, we come to the Planning Commission. Newer members won't remember this, obviously, with an extension of our policy. Ryan, did we bring a copy of that, or is that in the packet somewhere? I'm sorry. So it basically gives the staff the ability to approve extension of subdivisions without coming to planning commission. It goes back years ago when applicants would run in at the last minute and go, it's going to expire and I need an extension. And so we created this policy, and I apologize I didn't bring a copy of it, but all we're asking the commission to do is grant another 2 years of that same policy. We did a long time ago, yes. Yeah, and what we did was we created a maximum number of extensions to 10 years. And there's one that's getting close. I think they have one more extension, and then that's it. So,
All right, so what we need to do then is get a motion on the floor to continue with the 2-year extension expiration policy as it's been in use. Is that correct?
right.
All right.
That motion.
Mr. Douglas,
I
we have
made
a
it.
motion. We have a second. Mr. Finney? All right, any discussion?
I know some of you don't even know what it is, so you can abstain if you care to. That'd
Fair
be,
enough.
Fine, but
All right, under these circumstances, we'll go with a voice vote, so all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign, and motion carries.
did you have any abstentions?
Oh, abstentions.
Anybody abstain?
One abstain, okay. Two, all right, thank you. I'm good with numbers.
3.
We have 3.
New guys.
Fair enough. Okay. All right, and motion carries.
Thank you. That's it for now.
All right.
Do we have anything for next month?
Oh, yeah, all right.
Yes, you will have a meeting. February 28th, I believe, is that date. But yes, there is something coming.
Full slate that day, or,
One that I know of,
okay.
yeah.
All right, well, we'll be looking forward to it. Anything else before we adjourn? All right, nothing else, we will stand adjourned.